Good evening. I'm responding to Jack's claim that nuclear energy is safe, cost-effective, and an environmentally friendly alternative energy source to fossil fuels that are used across the United States. His secondary claims were that nuclear energy is safe for both the environment and us. Nuclear energy is cost-effective, and nuclear energy is an environmentally friendly resource. My counterclaim is that nuclear energy is expensive and emits carbon into the environment, just like fossil fuels do. So his first claim was that nuclear energy is safe for both the environment and us. However, he only really touched on the radiation that nuclear plants emit and didn't really talk very much about the processing of nuclear energy and what it takes to build these plants, as well as the processing and mining of uranium, which is what nuclear energy is made from. But I'll touch more on those points later in Claim 3, which is more about the environmental impact. My opponent claimed that the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission oversees all power plants. However, he does not account for accidents that cannot be predicted or prevented by these standards. Professor Paul Josephson of Colby College states, "Accidents are difficult to predict and have immediate, far-reaching consequences, compounded by the fact that most nuclear reactors are located near major population centers. It is nearly impossible to evacuate hundreds of thousands of people in a timely fashion, even with advance warning of several days." The second claim that he made was that nuclear energy is cost-effective. Although my opponent argues that the high costs associated with nuclear energy are due to the construction of the plants and not the power itself, these costs cannot be dismissed. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, when all costs are factored in, nuclear power costs an estimated $59.30 per megawatt hour. This is expensive when compared to other means of generating electricity. For example, clean wind power is $55.60 per megawatt hour, coal is $53.10, and natural gas is only $52.50 per megawatt hour. Additionally, the high cost of constructing nuclear plants is a huge deterrent to countries considering this alternative energy source. According to Executive Director of the Non-Proliferation Policy Education Center, Henry Sokolsky, in Finland, a turnkey reactor project has been led by the French manufacturer Areva, in part as a way to demonstrate just how inexpensively and quickly new nuclear plants can be built. However, the project is now more than 3 years behind schedule and at least 80% over budget. He also states that the construction of inherently safe reactors and solutions to waste disposal. Hold on, wait, that might be the wrong part. Sorry. Oh, yeah, no, that's right. Okay. A typical reactor, based on the experience of the advanced French industry, now costs a minimum of $6 billion. With costs these high to install nuclear reactors, my opponent cannot dismiss construction costs as a separate entity when considering the overall cost of nuclear energy. Okay. His third point was that nuclear energy is an environmentally friendly source. This claim is somewhat redundant, as my opponent already stated in his first claim that nuclear energy is safe for the environment. He claims that carbon is not a byproduct of nuclear energy. However, this is found to be false. According to Dr. Fritsch, a German researcher who has been doing a lifelong study of nuclear plants, saying nuclear is carbon-free is not true. It's less carbon-intensive than fossil fuel, but if you're honest, scientifically speaking, the truth is there is no carbon-free energy. I mentioned earlier the environmental impact of mining uranium that my opponent did not include. Dr. Fritsch goes on to say, nuclear power has more than just a little greenhouse gas attached to it. When mining uranium or refining and enriching fuel building the plant, and operating it are included, a big 1250 megawatt plant produces the equivalent of 250,000 tons of carbon dioxide a year during its life. If our goal is to reduce carbon emissions, nuclear energy does not seem to be the way to do so. In conclusion, while my opponent claims that nuclear energy is a safe, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly alternative energy source to fossil fuels, he does not produce adequate evidence to support this claim.
Can you see the duplication in the proposition in the preview at the beginning of the speech? That wasn't your fault. That was the claim that he had. You know, remember, I think I remember saying, basically, your proposition has the preview built into it. So when you present the proposition and then present the secondary claims, it just sounds like you're saying the exact same thing a second time, and that got a little bit confusing. But we know exactly where you're going, at least, so that helps. Your responses on the individual points I thought were pretty good. On the first point, you mentioned, you know, that there's processing, building, and mining that are part of the process, and you're going to talk about them down below, and I think you do a little bit of that. But when we're talking about the safety for human beings, for instance, and for the environment, you have one argument that you make a little bit later about potential accidents, but there are other safety issues, especially ones that are related to the processing stuff and storing nuclear materials and that kind of thing, that I think you're missing an opportunity on. That's like the low-hanging fruit on the nuclear power issue. That's the one thing that even the people who like nuclear power wish they had a better answer to, and you just kind of never bring that up. So that's just a suggestion. It's not like you did something bad here. I just thought, you know, there's some better arguments to be made than the ones that you made right here. Although the ones that you made were good too. You know, the potential disaster, we couldn't evacuate people in time, that sort of thing. The risk of disaster ought to be expanded a little bit. You ought to be able to tell us, you know, what kinds of likelihoods there are going to be on those kinds of things. You're right, it's a lot of accidents are unpredictable, but the NRC would turn around and say, yeah, but we've got multiple redundant safety systems to address, all the ones that are foreseeable, and prevent anything that is unforeseeable from having a negative effect, because these other things work. So you kind of need to, yeah, unless there's a tsunami, you know. I mean, that's the kind of example that you need to have to kind of respond to that particular point. The cost effectiveness issue I thought was pretty good. You're including construction costs in that process, and I think that's the argument that you want to be making, that those always have to be included in the process, and that diminishes whatever advantage the nuclear power would have over these other forms of energy. That part I thought was pretty good. The argument about it being environmentally friendly or unfriendly, you got a couple of quotes from Dr. Fritz that you're using. The acknowledgement that it's less carbon intense, the question then is how much less carbon intense it is. And then your follow-up evidence is you're still getting 250,000 tons of carbon every year from the whole process. That includes the construction and the maintenance and all that kind of stuff. Okay. But how does that compare to the others? Because if we're going to get the cost comparison on construction and all those things on the second point, then we ought to get the carbon comparison on the third point, and we don't really get that. But I thought that you did a good job presenting counterclaims on these arguments, diminishing some of the issues that the advocate talked about, and it was pretty easy to follow. And I appreciated the source citations on almost everything that you had. Thank you.